Okay, I want to distill down 10 tenets of cooking, and these are things that I've learned and applied over the last 20 years. And I've used them in my own cooking and also to help friends and family to cook better. And people of any skill level. You can be beginner, you can be advanced, whatever it needs to be. So some of them I've made up myself and some of them I've learned with others. Number one, when you're cooking, understand your audience. What this means is the biggest mistake people make when they're cooking for someone else, either trying to impress them or a family member or make them happy, is they cook what they want to cook. They don't think what that person wants to eat, right? If that person loves mac and cheese, don't make them a beef Wellington. If that person loves Mexican food, make them Mexican food. Nothing will make your food taste better to someone else like understanding what they like to eat. Think of it in terms of music, right? If you were to play a song for somebody and guarantee that they were going to like that song, if you knew somebody loved blues, you would play blues. You wouldn't turn around and say, play death metal. So very simple, but often overlooked, okay? Number two, cooking needs to be fun. You need to make it fun at all costs. The simplest ways to make it fun, listen to a podcast, listen to music. That improves your mood while you're cooking. Choose recipes that don't have things that you don't like to do. If you don't like chopping, don't choose a recipe or a dish that involves a lot of chopping, right? If you love chopping, choose a dish that involves a lot of chopping, like a quick stir fry or something like that, right? But use music to increase the mood, choose recipes with techniques that you actually like doing, okay? And back to the first point, I always find it easier to cook for somebody else. Even if it's your wife or your husband or whoever it is, knowing that someone else is going to taste the food makes it more interesting to cook. Because sometimes cooking for yourself can kind of be a little bit like, well, why don't I just go run to Chipotle and grab a burrito, right? It's easier to fall into that mind frame. But even if you're going to say, hey, I'm going to take some of this chicken noodle soup and I'm going to bring it to mom, or I'm going to bring it to my friend, that brings a lot of inspiration and motivation into your cooking. Tenet number 3 is a really, really, really simple one. It's just, when in doubt, use what you have on hand, right? Some of the most soul-sucking thing you can do is multiple trips to the grocery shop when you're cooking. The first place you should look when you go to make a dish or when you're cooking something is open up your cupboards and start pulling out things that you want to get rid of and use those components to put together your dish, right? So for example, some of the techniques we learned in this video would be, let's say you have a bag of legumes, like let's say you have a bag of lentils or a bag of beans, right? And you go, these have been sitting in my pantry for 3 months, and you've got a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of garlic. Start with that, because you've already spent money on that product, right? You don't have to make a trip to the grocery store, and you might find you have a couple pieces of bacon sitting in the bottom of the fridge, right? Saute off a little bit of bacon, use the leftover bit of garlic, use some vegetables that you have kicking around that are about to go rotten. You know, put in your beans, cook them down. You have a lovely, fresh lunch or dinner, and basically you've just used what's on hand. So the simple tenet is just use what you have on hand first. Turn money into food and flavor. Number 4, find somebody that you really appreciate online with YouTube videos that shows techniques and recipes, and keep making their recipes. For me, when I first started out, like years ago, I loved watching Jamie Oliver. Like, I was sort of in the Michelin star chef. I wanted to be a, top tier fancy cooking guy, but I loved Jamie Oliver. He was the guy that got me inspired to cook. The way he did his recipes, how easy they were, how a lot of them took 10 or 15 minutes, how they were really hands-on. He was always breaking out the mortar and pestle. He was doing all these cool things, the way he seasoned, it got me inspired to cook. So just find 1 or 2 people online that inspire you to cook. Hopefully we're one of them. Mantry, our business on our social account, has a bunch of techniques and dishes and inspiration you can use from. But find that 1 or 2 people and just stay in that lane. There's no point in bouncing all around the internet. Like, if it's just Jamie Oliver and Gordon Ramsay, then just stick with those 2 people. For this section, part 1, the next tenet is going to be, and one that shouldn't be overlooked, okay, is that when you're cooking, okay, if you start and you don't feel like cooking, just stop. order takeout, you know, go walk down the street and grab a sandwich, whatever. If you launch into a dish and you're really not feeling it, just stop. There's no point in ever being in a situation where you just don't feel like doing something and you're putting yourself through it. Cooking should be fun, but the goal is to every day start cooking. Start cooking something, even if it's just eggs in the morning or dinner or throwing together a quick sandwich. Start cooking. Allow that inspiration and that motivation to get rolling. Like you might go to fry an egg and then go, oh, you know what? Like I have a little bit of chili in the bottom of my fridge and I can add that to a little bit of olive oil, and there's a bag of jerky and I can saute little jerky bits in the chili and the olive oil, and then I can drizzle that over my egg. And like you might just sort of start this waterfall effect of creativity and fun. But the most important thing is you just have to show up and start cooking. But I want to give you permission to, if you're 5 minutes into it and you're just not feeling it, just stop. So that's the first 5, and in part 2 I'll talk about the next 5.